Welcome back, my friends, to Taslima Maya Art. I hope you're all having a good day. I'm super excited to present my very first oil painting tutorial for beginners with useful tips and tricks along the way. I will be painting a glorious kingfisher perched on a branch with a bokeh style background. And if you're new here, do please check out my playlist of diverse art tutorials. There's something for everyone. You can also join my free Facebook group, which is private, and share your own wonderful creations and be inspired by fellow artists. It's called Acrylic Pouring and Mixed Media by Taslima Maya Art. A heartfelt thank you goes out to all my current Patreon and channel members for supporting this channel. And I'm super excited to announce that we have a new collaborator joining us on the Creative Art Collective. Up after me will be Let's Pour with Patty and then Sheldon Briscoe of Shalrock Art to follow. So do stay with us. For those of you interested, you can also join me on Patreon for exclusive content, behind the scenes footage and one-to-one support. So without much further ado, let's get started. Welcome to my very first oil painting tutorial. In this video I'll be sharing my journey as a beginner in oil painting, creating a realistic kingfisher perched on a branch with a beautiful bokeh style green background. This is part of a series of in-person classes that I took with 9 other fellow artists. So whether you're new to oil painting or looking to refine your skills, I'll walk you through every step of the process. I'll also be sharing tips and tricks and techniques that I learned that helped me succeed. So grab your paints and your brushes and let's dive into the wonderful world of oil painting together. I began my journey with a stretch canvas of 30 by 30 centimeters. It's from Seabright of Brighton and it's deep edge. The first step was to use an acrylic based primer on it, and I used a gesso primer and covered it in 2 layers very lightly. And now I'm going to be transferring my image or outline onto the canvas, and I'm using a very simple method here. I've got a beautiful photograph of a kingfisher that's copyright free, and you can find many different images online which you can use, and all I'm going to be doing is tracing the outline of this and making many changes along the way with my oil paints. I have transferred it using graphite paper underneath my picture and just etching over the top with a hard pencil. And this was my first oil painting class. It's with a lovely lady or tutor called Shirley from Art School Wales, and I had such a blast. I really enjoyed getting stuck in. For this particular painting, I did use a number of different oil painting brands ranging from Daler Rowney, Georgian, Seabright, Winton, Windsor and Newton, so I got to experiment with the different consistencies of each brand. The next step was to begin layering the background, and I wanted to do a bokeh style background, so the beautiful diffused light background for my kingfisher. So I started with a range of different greens that I mixed up using other colours, including titanium white, yellow ochre and a number of different greens. And they went on really smoothly. I laid them in round circles on top of each other. So full disclosure, this was my first ever oil painting. I had no idea what I was doing initially, and I was actually a little terrified at first. I thought oil painting would be this big mysterious thing that was really difficult. But once I got into it, I realised it's just like playing with thick, colourful butter. You can layer it, mix it, and it's so much fun to experiment with. The great thing about oil painting is that you can fix things as you go, unlike watercolours. So honestly, I'm hooked now and I can't wait to do more. I did have an accidental abstract phase. I was going for realism, but there was one point in the painting where I got so carried away with the bokeh effect that my entire canvas basically turned into this abstract mess of green. It was like a Jackson Pollock painting, but for bokeh. Honestly, I thought I had totally ruined it, but then I stepped back and suddenly the colours started blending and it came together really nice. So yes, sometimes you have to embrace the chaos before it turns into something beautiful. Well, I did hit the bokeh blues. Creating that bokeh effect was honestly kind of like trying to paint with my eyes closed or blindfolded. I mean, it's supposed to look out of focus, right? So I kept second guessing myself. But here's the trick. Just keep blending and don't worry if it doesn't look right at first. As soon as you add the kingfisher and branch, it all comes together. Bokeh's like the magic of painting. It's what makes a whole piece pop. So here are the 10 key steps with tips and tricks for beginners that I learned through doing this process. Number 1, prepare your workspace and materials. So before we even begin painting, make sure your workspace is clean and organised. Set up your canvas, paints, brushes, palette and a few rags for cleaning. I primarily use Daler Rowney Georgian, Windsor and Newton and Seabright oil paints for this project. Having everything within reach will make the process smoother for you. So tip number 2 is, as you saw earlier, create a basic sketch on your canvas. Start by lightly sketching the basic outline of your bird or kingfisher or object and the branch with a pencil or thin paint. Don't worry about details at this stage. This sketch is just to guide you through the painting process. Keep it light and loose. If you make mistakes, you can always fix them later. Tip number 3, and you also saw me do this, block in the main colours. Use a medium-sized brush. Begin blocking in the main colours of your painting. For the kingfisher, focus on getting the general colour of its feathers and the background. Don't worry about perfect details yet. The goal here is to establish big shapes and colours. Tip number 4 is to layer and build up your values. Oil painting works beautifully in layers, so after the first layer dries, you can start adding more layers for depth. I had one class of 3 hours every week, so I had a chance for each of the layers I added to dry in between my next class. Start darkening the areas that should be in shadow and brightening the highlights. A good rule of thumb is to start dark and gradually move towards the light. So what you'll see here is I'll be adding lighter colours as I go along in the process. And I'll be adding some white as well in the bokeh effect, so some white round circles, which I later then use a very soft makeup brush to blend out. So here you can see they look very stark in terms of the lines around the circle, but you'll see me later blending out the edges of those circles or those rays of light, and it looks so much better. It's also a really good idea to keep your reference photograph or images close by so you can look back at them and look at the background and see if you can create something similar or more abstract. So I find you asking, what kind of medium am I using? Well, I'm using 2 products here to mix in with my paints. One is turpentine to thin out paint sometimes, and the other is my medium. I'll put up the recipe on the screen for you now. And this is the recipe that Shirley, the oil painting tutor, suggested that she uses, and is a really good recipe to use. But there's many others that you can find, as well as products online which you can use. So tip number 5, blend and smooth the paint. Here you can see me using that makeup brush just to blend out the edges of those circles so it looks far softer, which is what I'm after. One of the things that makes oil painting so fun is how smoothly the paints blend. Use a clean, dry brush to gently blend the edges of your colours. You can also use a little bit of solvent like turpentine to help with the blending. Just remember, less is more. I was super excited to create that dreamy green background with the bokeh effect using my soft circular strokes and layering the paint in various shades of green. The key to bokeh is soft transitions and blending to make the background look out of focus. Don't worry if it's not perfect. Bokeh is all about capturing the feeling of light and atmosphere. So as I go through this exciting new process for me, there are 9 other fellow artists in the room, and Shirley was busy really giving tips and tricks to everybody around the room. I did make a lot of errors and I learned from my mistakes as well, which is a really good way to remember how to do it. And I'm really excited because I've started painting my kingfisher now. I've used yellow just to put the highlight down as the base, and I'm going to paint on top of that with the oranges and the gorgeous vibrant blues of his feathers. I think it's important to note, if you're a beginner in oil painting, you don't actually need any solvents or any mediums at all. You can just paint straight out of the oil paint tubes. You can also just use linseed oil to thin down your paints a little bit, but it gives you a longer drying time. There are lots of different solvent-free options available for those who want a healthier, more eco-friendly approach to their art. Non-solvent alternatives are made from plant-based or natural ingredients which are safer to use while still offering great results. These alternatives not only clean brushes but can also be used to dilute your oil paints without the harsh chemicals. In traditional oil painting, solvents like turpentine or mineral spirits are often used to thin paint and clean brushes. They help create smoother textures and can break down oil paints. However, many artists are now becoming more aware of the potential health risks and environmental concerns that come with using these solvents. Prolonged exposure can lead to things like respiratory issues and skin irritation. So that's why non-solvent alternatives are a really good idea. Amongst many, one example would be walnut oil, and there's a number of other different brands you can find if you have a look around. So you can see I've just managed to highlight some of the breast of the bird with some orange, and I'm going to be blending that in using my soft bristle makeup brush just to get that gorgeous blended look. And you really have to be very light-handed with this brush and simply just dab it and barely move it really just to get that blending to work. A fundamental principle in oil painting is fat over lean, which is a principle in oil painting where the initial layers of paint, the lean layer, has less oil content, while the top layer, the fat layer, has more oil or medium added. This ensures that the painting dries properly and avoids cracking, as the lean layers dry faster and the fat layers stay flexible. Tip number 6 is to detail the kingfisher. Now it's time to focus on the details of your kingfisher. Start adding texture to its feathers and refine the shape. Pay close attention to the direction of the feathers and the way the light hits them. A small detail brush will help you achieve fine details, especially around the face and the beak. After my third class, I started getting really into this process. I was amazed how accessible oil painting is compared to other mediums that I've tried like watercolor and acrylic. Oil painting or oil paints are far more workable. There's a longer work time on them so you can correct any mistakes or errors you make, and also layering them, it's much easier and it's just amazing. Honestly, you must try it if you haven't already. I really enjoyed this. I took to it like a fish to water and I was amazed at how fun it was. So I was getting super excited thinking about future potential projects. And I'm a very detail-orientated person. I always have been since I was a child. And I love doing the details across the head there on the feathers, down the side, and blending, and just really looking at what kingfishers look like. I had a number of other pictures or reference photographs to look at, but this is how it's looking at the moment. I'm in love with this, absolutely in love. And I made a decision to try a different technique, the impasto technique on his feathers, to give it a more of a 3D look. So I'll show you that in a while. But for now it's time for tip number 7, painting the branch. The branch should have texture and dimension. Start with the darker tones of the wood and gradually add lighter shades to highlight the raised parts of the bark. This creates depth and gives the branch a more realistic appearance. As a beginner, I kind of went the other way. I put down a layer of white initially and I layered on top of it over and over until I got the 3D effect I was after. This was a bit more of a challenge for me for some reason, creating the 3D dimension and the highlights to this branch, but I learnt a lot along the way. And this is how the branch turned out so far. There's still a little bit of work left on it to put some shadows in, but I'm loving this. What do you think? Let me know in the comments down below. Obviously it's still not finished. There's quite a way to go still. We're putting more Bokeh style lighter colours in the background there. Tip number 8 was to use the medium to your advantage. This step here was to add a little bit of medium to my whole painting. It was dry at this stage, and then add the light white colour to give that effect of light being diffused in the background. I did put a little too much medium down, so it kind of slid around a little bit, but I made it work. So you can see me there adding some white into the background, some white highlights, and then later blending them out with my soft makeup brush. So what about you, my dear viewers? Have you tried oil painting, or would you like to try? I hope this inspires you to try and start your own oil painting journey and see where that takes you, even if it's starting very small with some very basic oil paints. You don't have to buy the expensive brands. You can also pick them up secondhand on Marketplace and eBay, so they don't have to break the bank. But one thing I would say is to really consider safety and make sure you have ventilation in the room you're using them in. Now I'm going to leave you with a bit of music, and I'll see you at the next stage. Bye for now. Tip number 9 was to use multiple reference photos so you can get each of the elements on the bird right. Now, given I'm not really a bird watcher, although I love birds, I really needed some reference photographs to look at how their feet look, and I found a bunch of them which were really useful, so I could then paint in the feet on the branch. So for some reason, and I'm not sure if I regret this, I decided I wanted an impasto 3D effect on the wings by putting on thick oil paints using a palette knife. And I don't know why I had this idea, I just had this vision of 3D elements on this painting. I did do this and I regretted it after, and I was thinking of scraping it off. But really, I don't know, it just had this kind of realism mixed with abstract, textured sort of look to it, and I wasn't sure if it really went well together. I'd love to hear your thoughts on me mixing these two different techniques together. For me personally, I couldn't pull it off, so I did end up scraping it off. But I think I will use the impasto oil technique, the texture technique, on a future painting. Possibly, but I would do the whole thing in impasto using a palette knife, have it 3D looking and have gorgeous texture on it. With this particular painting, there was just too much realism around the head and the rest of the body, too much detail. So when I did layer each of the feathers on the way I'm doing so now on the video, it just didn't look right in the end. I spent a whole weekend umming and ahhing about whether I should keep it, or blend it into the rest of the bird, or scrape it, and eventually I decided to scrape it off and just paint it flat. But yeah, it's a lesson learnt, and without experimenting we don't learn anything. What I have learned is I'm quite good at doing feathers with a palette knife, and I will try that again. Now, if you've gotten this far in the video, I just want to thank you, my viewers, for watching. It keeps this channel going, keeps me creating new videos and content for you. I really appreciate those of you who watch my videos in full and leave a comment down below as well. It helps the algorithm push my video out to more people so more people can see it. So I am very grateful to you. And this is how it looked. Now, you're probably saying it doesn't look that bad. It actually looks quite pretty with the textured feathers. But I think for me, I just couldn't really pull it off. I took the texture all the way to the edge of the wing, and I wish I hadn't. And although it does look quite nice there, doesn't it? It was super tricky. And here I've just got it onto the part of the bird's chest, which I didn't mean to. So I put some masking tape down now and trying to do it that way. Quite tricky because there was a lot of oil medium on the background, so the masking tape kept coming off, as you can see. But again, a learning curve. I should have done this bit before I put all that medium on the background. But again, you know, I love experimenting and seeing what can happen. And yeah, at one point, when I'm more experienced with oil paints, maybe I can pull this look off with a hyper-realism mixed in with impasto, impressionistic, textured kind of look. But that's not going to be now. So this is what the textured piece looked like, my friends. And I took a palette knife and I began to scrape it off. It didn't really take so long because I hadn't fully dried yet. I then repainted my base layer and started adding more to that to take it back to how it was originally before I added the texture. So my friends, time for tip number 10, the final tip. Add highlights and final touches. Here I'm using a nail brush, which is extremely fine. So once everything is dry, go back in with your brightest highlights. Add small touches of white or lighter shades to areas that catch the light, like the kingfisher's beak and feathers. This will make your subject pop off the canvas and give it life. The kingfisher's feathers were the hardest part for me. It was such a challenge to get those feathers right, but it was also rewarding when I finally figured out the texture and layering technique. And so here is the final piece, and like I said, I am in love with it. I prefer it with the realism, and I can't wait to try my next painting. I do hope you like this. Let me know what you think in the comment box below. And it is my first actual oil painting that I've ever attempted properly, and I'm really happy. I enjoyed all the classes at the Art School Wales, and I enjoyed finishing this off at home. Fantastic. I love it. And that's it. I hope these 10 tips and steps have given you some insight into the process of oil painting. Remember, it takes time, practice and patience, but with each layer you'll see your artwork come to life. Keep practicing and don't be afraid to make mistakes, since they're part of the learning process. Thanks for joining me on this journey, and I hope this video helps you feel more confident with your own oil painting projects. Up next on the Creative Art Collective is Let's Pour with Patty. See you there.